basically, I wanted to have you guys all together because we all got to experience some pretty, like, really incredible stuff with Malachi. Obviously, like, crazy hard, but, like, undeniably, like, I guess you could say, like, holy and sacred, you know? And so, since it's, you know, our family and your brother, I wanted to, like, kind of tell you all this stuff. So, or at least whatever I could remember still. So, as you probably recall, you know, your brother and your sisters were here from Texas. Seth was here, Malachi's best friend. And they all kind of left. Malachi was about to be discharged, and then in a turn of events, the day before he's going to be discharged, he had like kind of an emergency situation, and then kind of things started going real downhill from there.
Yes, ma'am.
And from that point on, he ended up just in a lot of pain, and we found out later that his small bowels, you know, you have your small bowels and then your large intestines, because small bowels had like a kind of like they thought it was an obstruction, which would make you throw up, make you not be able to digest food and stuff like that. And I guess it was a partial obstruction, but the problem is, like, I guess every time you talk, you suck in air and stuff, and normally it just goes through your digestive tract or you burp it up or whatever. Well, for him, he wasn't able to do either, and it just kept getting built up and like more trapped. And I don't know if you've had any like gas pain before, but it is excruciating. And especially like a bowel obstruction, like some people have said like it's worse than like childbirth. It's like the worst pain ever. So he was in a lot of pain, thinking that it was like his very full belly, you know, from the fluids being built up. And so on Monday he was kind of begging them to do a paracentesis and drain his tummy. And because of the emergency situation that happened a few days before, they were kind of like afraid to, because his blood pressure kept dropping, and that could really do him in, you know, if they did a paracentesis and had that problem. Well, Monday, as you know, is like my busiest day of the week, you know, do all the, you know, I got all the things Monday morning that are commitments. And I just kept feeling in my spirit, like all Monday morning, like, gotta get back to the hospital. And finally, after I did like as much as my commitments that like Travis couldn't do by himself, and I like had to be there for, I was like, honey, I have to go, and I've got to go to the hospital. And so I went to the hospital, and on my way driving there, I was like maybe about 15 minutes out. It was like high traffic time, you know, like in the afternoon. And the hospital called me, which never happens. And they're like, Ms. Conover, there's been an emergency, and Malachi is being, you know, like emergency, like he's going to the ICU. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be there in like 15 minutes. And they're like, okay, he's in room, whatever. They told me whatever room he's in. Mm-hmm. And so I like flew in there, you know, running up the stairs, running into his room. And as I like go up in there, they had just got him in the room, and there were probably, and that was the last room that you guys all saw him in. That was the room that he passed in. That was Monday. And I like went in there, I went up in there, and I'm like, hey, and he's like, hey, and I didn't want to like be in the way because there were so many people in and out, and so I kind of like stepped out of the room. They saw that I was there, but there were literally probably like and you saw how big the room was. There's probably like 30 or more people in there, literally like running, like frantically running around, and it was amazing to watch the level of skill and like how fast they worked, like doing all the things that they were doing to him. And the people that were running in and out of the room, they were bringing in all sorts of stuff, taking out stuff, and they were bringing in coolers of blood for him, and like plasma and like blood products. And that's when they ended up giving him, they gave him, like when you get a blood transfusion, you get a bag of blood, right? And the blood goes in your body. They gave him 15 bags of blood that night. 15. And a person his size, to completely like replenish all the blood in your body, it would be 12 to 15 bags. So basically he like didn't have any of his own blood almost. Like that's how much blood he got that night. And they completely saved his life. And they told me that night that he probably, it was very unlikely that he would live through the night. And I heard at one point when they were calling, you know, I was watching everything and seeing the doctors talk, and I was directly across the hall, but I could hear everything and see most of it. And I heard somebody say, "Where's his mother? Does somebody have his mother's phone number?" And so I called. I'm like, "I'm right over here." And they're like, who said that? And all the people like pointed over to me. And so this doctor came over to me, and she's like explaining to me what's going on and how they think that somehow he has some massive internal bleed, and they said because he was vomiting, they need to probably intubate him, which means, you remember how he had that breathing tube, put him to sleep so that they can do a CT scan, because they were like, if we put him in for a CT scan, you have to lay perfectly still, and if he throws up, you know, he would suffocate. And so they're like, the safest way to do that, and we have to do it right now, you know. And she's telling me this, and I'm just like, you know, crying. And she's like, "I'm so sorry." Like, and she's like, "Do you want to go in there and talk to him one more time before we intubate him?" And I said, "Yeah, absolutely." And so I go in there, and it's like everybody in the room kind of steps back, you know, and like lets me have my moment with Kai. And he's like, "Mom, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." I'm like, "Honey," like, and even all the nurses were like, "You don't need to say sorry. You didn't do anything wrong." He goes, "I did. I so wanted to get a paracentesis. They asked me if I would be dizzy, if I was dizzy at all, and I lied to them. I told them that I wasn't dizzy because I wanted to get, you know, my tummy drained so badly." Mm-hmm. And I'm like, "Honey, it's okay, you know, and it's gonna be okay." And he's like, are any of my arms free? Can I hug my mom?" And they all like come over to him, and they're like pulling stuff off, and they're like, "Yeah," and they like freed his arm enough, you know, and he like gives me this hug and like not wanting to let go. And he's like, "You've been the best mom, and I'm so thankful for you. Thank you for all that you're doing for me." And I'm like, "Well, you're gonna be okay, you know," like, and he's like, "Just thank you." And he's like, "And thank you." He kept telling all the nurses, "Thank you," you know, and he was like so polite. And later on, like several days down the road, some of those workers that were in there that night were like, "Yeah, I was there that night when we thought he was going to die." And I have never seen someone with a hemoglobin of 3, normally not even alive, you know, or passing, like fully coherent and fully like talking and like fully with it like that. And they're like, "Anne, he was so sweet and so polite." And so they intubated him. They kind of like put him out a little bit, intubated him, and then they're like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, we forgot to take his sweatshirt off." And they're like, "This looks like a really nice sweatshirt." And they're like, "Is it okay if we cut it off?" And I'm like, "Well, we're kind of in a rush here, right? Like a time crunch." And they're like, "Yes." And I'm like, "Yeah, cut it off." And so they had to like cut his shirt off and stuff. And that night, Travis came and spent the night there, and we both like spent the night there. And I think Travis left at like 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. And at that point, they had like stabilized him more, and he was gonna like, they thought that what they had figured out is they think when they went to do the paracentesis that and this is a really common thing, like that's why they say there's always like potential side effects, or, you know, well, I don't even know what you call them. Complications. Risk. Yeah, risk. There's always associated risk, and they accidentally severed like a vein or something, and so that's what happened, and he started like bleeding out that vein, and so that's where all the massive blood loss came from, they think. And so they ended up stabilizing him, you know, and then he was gosh, so that was like Tuesday, Wednesday or so. And then, we kind of spent, and then Mrs. Kreitz ended up flying in. And at that point, he was a lot more like coherent, but just in a ton of pain. And that's when we figured out that he had that obstructed bowel. And the reason why he had that was because his belly was so filled, it was like squishing his intestines so much and trapping all that in there. And, when you're having all these drugs and stuff, it slows down your digestion. So they were trying to get it to move, but then the pain meds at the same time are like counteracting that and like slowing it down. And so this poor guy is in a lot of pain, but it was really a blessing that Mrs. Kreitz could come because she's like one of his favorite people in the whole world, and she was able to spend a couple of days with him, like just fully talking and stuff. But she told me like, and then she made it to where I could leave and go home, But after she spent the first night there, just everything that she kind of reported back to me, I was like, oh my gosh, like I need to be there and spend the night even though she's here, because I don't know how much longer he has, and he seems like he's going downhill so fast. And I was feeling like obviously panicky about that and trying to figure out every possible thing that I could do to reverse it, And in the meantime, he's intubated. We finally get it to where he can get that out, which that alone was a miracle, because normally that takes a while. But he was like awake, intubated, which had to feel horrible, I'm sure. But hospice team kept coming in, which is like the end of life care, and talking about like, the fact that there's not really any way for him to live, like, so we should probably just kind of let nature take its course and just kind of let him pass, and talking to me about ways how we can do that. And at that point, Malachi was like, no, I want to live. And no, I want, if I start to die, like, I want you to resuscitate me. And, you could see that they were like, and even so much so, like, they put him on drugs because of the intubation, and so he was technically kind of incoherent, and he's like, well, you're the power of attorney for, the directive or whatever for his health, so you can make that decision. And I was like, I can't go against what he keeps saying that he wants, if he's fighting to live, I'm not going to take that away from him. I'm just going to do everything that I can to fulfill his wishes, And so during that time, one morning, hospice literally came 3 times before and had long talks with me before even lunchtime. And I was just so disheartened. And even during that time, he was awake, and they asked him, Kai, do you want to be resuscitated? Like, if you, need to be, because it would cause a lot of trauma on your body, and it might do more damage than good. And he even wrote down on a piece of paper, yes, I want to live. Yes, I want to be resuscitated. And I was like sitting there after they left the 3rd time, and I was just, I was just like, God, I don't know what to do. Like, this is really hard, And I just sat there for probably like an hour, just sitting there doing nothing, but like, kind of like doing one of those prayers where you're like just listening. And during that time, one of our followers like contacted me, and they're like, I think I have an option for a 3rd transplant for him. And I'm like, what? And so I was just like, I messaged her back, and I'm like, what do you mean? And she's like, I've been doing all this behind the scenes work, and I've called all these doctors and like spoke with all these different people, and she's like, can I give you a call? And so I spoke with her over the phone. As this woman from California, and she said, I spoke with all these teams of people at Stanford University, which is a very similar hospital as Emory University, which is it's a teaching hospital. And she said they take on extreme cases that other people won't, and I've helped like 5 or 6 people when all these other hospitals said no. And I'm like, so then my hope is like starting to rise, and she's, so then I'm like, okay, so what, so we start kind of get that ball rolling, you know? And then I talked to Malachi, and he was he's like, that would be it. This is what he said. He's like, that would be sick. And he was like excited about it. But there was all these like hoops to go through, right? Like he'd have to get a medical transport, which means like he would have to fly on a special airplane, the team of doctors, all this medical equipment, stuff like that. And that would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, you know? And there's just like all these different hoops to jump through for that to happen. And then who knows if he would even potentially even be strong enough, you know, at the other end, which is also very unlikely. But because of that, the doctors at Emory were like, well, I don't see any possible way he could survive a third transplant, but, you know, we'll do whatever you want. And they were really great about that. And they're like, we'll just do what you want, you know, until we can't. And so because of that, they decided to put him on dialysis, and Malachi was going downhill so fast that he could not think straight. He was like, he was just moaning all day long. He was just like, had his eyes shut all the time, moaning, and you'd be like, hi, open your eyes. Did you guys go visit him during that time?
Mm-hmm. I think so.
So you guys went to visit him during that time. You'd be like, hey, Kai, open your eyes. Can you open your eyes for us? And it was like a massive effort for him to just even open his eyes for a minute. Like that's how extreme he was. So because of this Stanford thing, the hospital decided to put him on dialysis because his kidneys were shutting down. And that's why he was getting that way, because your liver not working also makes your kidneys shut down over time. And so because his kidneys were shutting down, they put him on dialysis, which was not a guarantee, but they thought they would try. And that within like one day really turned him around quite a bit. And so they put him on dialysis on Saturday. And then Sunday, he had like his first like real coherent day where he was more like, you know, he wasn't his happy self, but he could communicate again.
I think I was there for that in the morning.
Yeah.
When I went. Yeah.
I think so. And he would be able to communicate. He was just kind of short. Like he wasn't super talkative, like his normal talkative self. And so we had a day, and towards the end of the day, it was probably like 5 or 6, he was sitting there and he's like, Mom, he's like, can I let go or something like that? And I was like, I get up from my seat and I go over there. I'm like, what? Like, I'm thinking he's like got something in his bed, you know, like hooked up that he wants moved or something like that. And he's like, no. I'm like, what do you need to let go of here? And he's like, no, can I just be done? I can't do this anymore. And I was like, you mean like go be with Jesus, like done? He's like, yeah, I'm ready. And I was just like, I'm like, well, kind of, you know, it's your life, you know, like it's not my life, you know. If you want to keep fighting, like then I will fight for you, you know, just like I have been. But if you're ready to let go, yeah, I mean, nobody would blame you. I don't think anyone would have even gone as far as you've gone, you know, like you've fought so hard and you've made such an impact, you know, on so many lives. And, you know, I just was encouraging him. He was like, do you think it's gonna hurt? And I was just like, well, I don't know if it is, but I can tell you what the hospital's plan of action for that was. And I just kind of explained the whole process of how the hospital was going to, what they would do would be taking him off of his meds, because at that point he had really high blood pressure meds that were keeping it, because his blood pressure kept crashing. And, you know, obviously the dialysis was keeping his kidneys working. And I said that they would wean you off of that, and they would just put you on really heavy pain meds so that you would go peacefully. And I said the only problem with that is when you're on those heavy pain meds, you won't be able to really communicate with anyone. So if you're wanting to communicate with somebody before then, you should probably do that. Just keep that in mind. And he's like,
Okay.
I think I would like that. I'm like, okay. And he's like, okay. He goes, well, you should probably tell all the people online and tell all my followers. And I was like, okay. I'm like, I will, okay, but I'll probably wait a little bit to tell everybody. And he's like, well, they've been working so hard for this third transplant. And I'm like, you're right. And at that point, it seemed like everything was lining up, because the doctors, and I even, like, some of our followers found how I said it would be hundreds of thousands of dollars for him to fly out there. They even got him a free transport to go out there. Like, it seemed like all the stars were lining up, but he was just like, he goes, I just don't see any way that I can recover after this, even if I get another transplant. I don't think I can go through that. And I was like, okay, like, that's the most important thing, is how you feel about it, and so he was like, well, do I need to, like, who should I see, one last time, like, how long would it take people to get here? I'm like, well, Grandma and Grandpa are already on their way, so they actually should be here any minute. And like, who else do you want to see? He's like, well, I really want to see Isaiah, because he hadn't seen you at all, and you guys had all just, like, come there and visited him. And I'm like, well, actually, Isaiah's, crazy enough, Isaiah's actually on his way here right now, and so he should be here tomorrow. And then he's like, and I should, be fine for Dad to come one more time. I'm like, okay. And he's like, well, what about Sky and Sage? I'm like, well, I think they kind of already said goodbye to you, just like last week. That's why they flew out here. He's like, okay. I'm like, well, they might like to FaceTime you. And he's like, yeah, I would like that. He goes, but I want to do that tomorrow because I'm just too tired today. I'm like, all right. He's like, okay. And so after that, there was just, like, a lot of peace, and you could tell that he was just, like, resolute in his decision, and he was just really peaceful after that. And I'm like, well, do you want me to read you the word a little bit? He's like, oh, I love that. And so I read him Psalm 139, which is the psalm that talks about, I knit you in your mother's womb, and how you're fearfully and wonderfully made, and, like, I have more thoughts for you than the sand on the sea, like that type of verse. So I read that to him, and as I was reading that to him, at the very end, Grandma and Grandpa walked in, and they walked in, and Malachi was like, Mom, I just want you to know, I'm really grateful, like, I'm really thankful for all that you've done for me. You're, like, the best mom. And he just went on and on about all this, like, really sweet stuff, to me. And, I'm, like, crying. And, well, actually, back up. When he told me that he was, like, ready to go, before I read that verses to him, I told him all that type of stuff, about how proud I was of him, and how, I just went on and on to him about what a great, how awesome God made him. And he did that to me as soon as Grandma and Grandpa got there, which was so cool, because they were standing there and got to, like, hear the whole thing. And it was, like, so touching. And then he, like, gave me a big hug. Actually, I think Grandma took a picture of him giving me a hug. And then Grandma went over there to say hi to him, and she said something. I actually got the whole thing on video, I think, most of it. And she's like, you're doing such a good job fighting, you're doing such a good job hanging in there. And he goes, well, yeah, actually not anymore. And she's like, kind of like, yeah, you're doing great, And he goes, well, I have to tell you, I can't remember what he did. I videoed it, but he said something like, I'm ready to go now. And he said, I think I'm probably gonna pass tomorrow or the next day, which would have been Monday or Tuesday, because this was Sunday. And, she was like crummy, and she was like, it's okay, and holding his cheek and, kissing him and just saying all sorts of really sweet, assuring words, to him. And then Grandpa, said some things to him or whatever. But so that was that night. And then right after that, he was like, I'm just in a lot of pain. I really need some pain meds now. And he had gone all day without pain meds at that point. So I think that's probably why he was so coherent as well. But at that point, he was really like going downhill. And I'm like, I'm going to go home for just like a couple hours, and I need to go home and tell the other kids, so that they know. And then I'm going to come back home. And he's like, can you just not go yet? Can you just wait until I get my pain meds and then you can go? And I'm like, because it's already like 6:30, 7 o'clock at that point, And so I waited. Sometimes it takes a while for them to get the orders in and stuff like that. So to wait like another hour there. But I waited until he got his pain meds and Grandma and Grandpa. But it was really sweet that Grandma and Grandpa got to have like that moment of like coherence with him, Then he got his pain meds and he was pretty out of it for a while. But the amazing thing was like Isaiah was like, you want to tell your part of the story?
Yeah. I mean, so when Malachi told Mom that he was ready to go, I was in my car on the way back home already because, so you guys know I went down to Texas to go compete. And in my decathlon, everything was going good.
Like really good.
Like really good. Like top 500 in world history. Good.
Like best meet of his life so far.
It was really, really good. And then going into pole vault, I was having really good pole vault sessions with practices and stuff. Like on Tuesday, I cleared, or I guess I didn't fully clear it, but I almost cleared basically a full foot above my PR at practice, which is insane. And then at the meet, I cleared a bungee that was a foot over my PR. And then I checked my opening bar, which was a foot below my PR, a foot and a half below my PR, and easily cleared it. Like I have a video of me being like a full foot and a half over, just like nobody's problem. And then for some reason, I go and pole vault and I didn't clear it at all. Like I kept hitting it on the way up. All the vault looked terrible. And so because of that, I know how I did. So my really great meet, garbage now. Like there's no coming back from it once you screw up your meet like that. So after that, because of everything with Texas and I knew that Malachi was in a rough spot, I basically did not look at my phone. I didn't know any updates. I didn't check anything. The only thing I was on my phone for was I had all my Instagram notifications silenced. I had everything silenced. I would just talk with people who were there at the meet to figure out where I needed to go because I was just laser focused. And because of that, I was like, all right, I'm done. I'm going to check in because I need to know how Malachi's doing. And I looked on the stories, and all of Mom's stories are like what I thought. Malachi was in the ICU, not doing good, but still stable. So I was like, okay, he's good. Maybe I'll finish it. Maybe I'll do the javelin, the 1500, just see. And I kept like feeling in my spirit, like, like you need to call it. So I decided to stop and go home. And so then I said my goodbyes to everybody. I got all my stuff together and hopped on the road. And actually, I was supposed to stay in the hotel Sunday night because I knew that after a decathlon I was going to be exhausted, so I needed to stay and leave Monday because it's a 12-hour drive back. I had the day off work, everything on Monday. So for some reason, I booked my hotel wrong, and because I booked my hotel wrong, I didn't have a Sunday night stay. It was just till Saturday night. So I had to leave Sunday, and my plan was to go find a motel, and I was going to go get a motel and stay the night at the motel, and then get back later and then probably go see Malachi. But about 3 hours, 2.5, 3 hours into the drive is when Mom called me, and that's when she had just gotten done talking with Malachi about Malachi wanting to see me, and that he had basically said that he was ready to be done. And so that was really hard on the way home, and I literally spent 15 minutes in a gas station because I got to the gas station, forgot what I was doing. So I was just walking around. I was going to go get energy drinks to make sure I was going to make it through the night. And I literally walked around. The cashier was like, dude, are you good? I was like, oh, yeah. So then I got my energy drinks and hopped back on the road. But had I not no-hided and had I not left, then I wouldn't have made it back at 5 a.m. when I did. And basically by like 7:15 in the morning is when Malachi got back on like the stronger pain meds to the point that he was not really coherent anymore. So I was able to, I mean, he was still, like he was coherent, but he was still kind of out of it. So like he would open his eyes and talk and be like, oh, Isaiah, hey, what's up? But every time I'd ask him, like, hey, is there anything you need to talk about? He would just be like, yeah, there's something. Yeah, so.
You could tell he was trying to say something to say something to Isaiah, and like he wanted to say all those meaningful things, but you could tell that his mind just could not process enough to.
Yeah, it was like he was getting ready to say it, but then that mental hurdle of just like actually saying it was too much. So he like was, I'm gonna say it. Oh my gosh, but it's so hard, never mind. And then you just kind of like, and then go. So.
But you at least got some good talk. I mean, you guys were able to talk back, and then.
Oh yeah, well
when
I got there, I get there and Mom's like asleep on the couch, like she's laying there, she's like half asleep, and I would like walk in and I'm like, hey. I sit down, and Malachi is, I guess with the pain meds and stuff, when he would sleep, he wouldn't like fully sleep. He'd like talk as if he was in a video game or something. So he would just be like,
he's talking to all sorts of people.
Yeah, but when I was in there, he was like, oh no, that's the wrong one. No, you don't be doing that. And like whatever, just while he's laying there, and he's just, oh my gosh, you're gonna get him. Oh yeah. And then he just kind of fade out, and they come like back in. But I like sit down. He goes, ow, that hurts. Oh, that hurts. That really hurts. Oh wow. And you know the little tubes that go down your nose?
It's called an NG tube. He had a tube that went down his nose all the way down to his stomach.
Right? And so he's going like, ow, oh wow, that hurts. And he's pulling the tube out of his nose as he's like, oh, ow, whoa, that hurts. And he just yanks it all the way out. And I'm like, Mom. And Mom gets up and she goes, what? Oh. And so both of us had this little like freak out moment as he's just yanking this tube out of his nose. And then...
yeah, but thankfully it was on the agenda for the doctors to take it out that morning. Just not that way.
Yeah. So that was a pretty eventful thing right as I got there. Yeah. And that kind of woke everybody up. So then he was up, and that's when he was able to talk to me for a second. And because he pulled it out, it wasn't all like nasally or anything when he was talking to me, and it was kind of normal. But yeah, pretty crazy for that to be the first thing I saw when I got it back in there. I was like, oh man, he's like talking. And he's like, ow, that really hurts. And
was he asleep when he did like that?
Yeah, I think so.
He was like half asleep.
Yeah, he was like half asleep. I think he didn't even realize. He was just like dreaming and was like, there's something in my nose while I'm dreaming. Let me pull this out. So
that's why for a while they actually had his arms strapped to his bed.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Jeez. But yeah, and then he kept saying all of the weirdest things because when he was off the pain meds, because he was trying to stay off the pain meds as long as possible because he was waiting for me and Dad to get back so he could talk to us so he wasn't delirious. And so I saw him trying to hold out a little longer. Unfortunately, Dad got there around 8 or 8:30, so Malachi tried to hold out but just couldn't hold out that long, which is why he got back on them at like 7 in the morning. But it was pretty hard to hear how he was, because he was really hurting. But even while he was really hurting, he would say the funniest things. Like, he was sitting there and he, if you've heard him while he's hurting, he'd be like, "Ow, oh wow, oh goodness, oh wow." And there was one time where he's sitting there. Actually, there was a couple times that he did it. He's like, "Oh, ow, golly gee, that hurts." It's like, I'm like, who in the world says golly gee?
When they're in that much pain.
Yeah, and so he would do that, and when he was kind of delirious, like, the nurses and stuff would come up to him, and they would be talking to him, and he'd just be like, "Jesus loves you." And they'd be like, "Oh yeah, he does." And they're like, "Yeah, Jesus loves you." And he just kept doing stuff like that to everybody there. And so that was really cool. But he kept doing that, and there was a point I was trying to sleep there because I wanted to just stay and sleep. So, I mean, I did a full decathlon, and then directly after the decathlon, or I guess not a full, I'd missed 2 events, but then hopped on the road and drove 12 hours straight with losing an hour. So I was exhausted. At the point that I had seen Malachi, I was already up for 24 hours and had a competition. So I'm like barely holding my eyes open. So I was able to take like an hour-long nap probably.
Yeah, but then he was in so much pain.
That was probably the hardest thing for me.
Yeah, that was by far the worst.
That was because the whole time I'm like, maybe him fighting, like he needs to fight, like maybe he needs to fight. But after, like, I was sitting there and like they had, I guess he was having gas problems, and this was right like after they had just started getting him back on the meds, so I guess they hadn't fully kicked in yet. But they were like having to roll him over to do something or move him on his side, and he was literally like screaming. Like I don't think you've ever heard Malachi scream. Like he was screaming like, "Ouch, ouch, that hurts, that really hurts, that hurts." And he started screaming, "Help, like help me, like stop doing that, help me. Somebody help me."
For like an hour.
It was probably an hour straight that was going on. And I was like trying to sleep, and of course I can't sleep. And
nobody could sleep through that. I mean, he was screaming in pain.
I think at that point, that's when I was like, this is cruel. Like, the idea of trying to convince him to fight more is cruel, because he had already fought for so long, and to be in that level, like a funny thing is too that I mean, I always thought, I mean, our family, we all have pretty high pain tolerances, and I recently got that cavity, that pain in my mouth, whatever, and huge appreciation more for what Malachi's going through, because like all of his teeth are probably at the level in which mine is, and I couldn't think of anything other than my tooth unless I was taking pain meds. And even still now, somewhat it's gotten better, but even still now, like, and that was just like normal thing for his mouth, and that was not the thing he complained about. So to understand what kind of pain he was going through was just like insane.
Yeah.
So that was Monday, and then
that was early Monday morning.
I ended up leaving at probably 11-ish and going back home and taking a nap, and I ended up sleeping for about an hour until Grandma and Grandpa woke me up, and then I ended up coming back at 6:30 p.m. with Elena, and we got back and we were hanging out with Malachi and helping keep him clean because his mouth was really dry and had to have like stuffs vacuum, like, you know, the dentist when they have the thing.
At that point he was having chest, like,
it was like phlegm.
Kind of like phlegm in his chest, and most of us would just cough it out, but he was so weak he could not cough it out, and so it was like building up, and he was really struggling to like breathe because was like really bothering him, you know.
It did.
And the phlegm as well was all like red and bloody and stuff, and because he couldn't, his stomach would get whatever, he couldn't have water, so his mouth was super dry. So imagine you haven't had water for like 3 days in your mouth, just super dry. So his lips would crack and his mouth was dry,
And just bleeding all the time.
and
His
then
blood
the
everywhere.
only like liquid would in his mouth would be either blood or phlegm. So, and he couldn't spit it out or do anything with it, but he kept like trying to grab it out, and it was a whole
there
ordeal.
was like this suction thing that he would have to turn on and then like suck it out.
Yeah. So Elena and I did that for a little bit, which let Mom go home. And is that when you talked to her?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or wait.
Yeah, Monday night.
Oh yeah. Okay, so when Grandma and Grandpa came, that wasn't when I talked to them.
Mm-mm.
That was when I just went home to like take a shower or get food or something like that. Okay. Yeah. That's when I talked to all of you about it. That's right.
And so Elena and I stayed until probably 10:30, because I was supposed to work in the mornings. I was supposed to work in the morning, and Elena was supposed to work in the morning. So, but in the morning, Mom
But
was
here's-
like, "You need to come back. You can't."
Well, here's the amazing. Oh yeah.
Yeah. In the
Yeah.
morning, Mom was like, "You need to be here." She was like, "He's going downhill really fast. You need to be here." And so,
I was like
So then I
4 or
came
5
back.
in the morning,
mhm.
and then like an hour later, I call him like, "What's up?" And he's like, "Oh, sorry, I fell back asleep."
Yeah, well, that was the thing. I was so tired. I woke up, I texted her back. I was like, she's like, "You need to be here." And I was like, "What do I do about work?" And then she was like, "You just need to," and so I texted Bernice, and as I had texted her, like, "Hey, I need to not come in. Like, is it okay if I skip work?" Then I like laid my phone down, and when I laid my phone down, I just fell straight back asleep. And so I woke up at what, like 5? Something like that, and then I'd seen her be like, "Yeah, don't worry about it, don't come into work." And then Mom was like, "You need to be here right now." So then I drove straight down there, and yeah, that was kind of the beginning of getting
And
to
the
the
night
hospital.
the night before, like after like when Elena and him were there for a little bit, and I had told you guys, you know, about that, I still was like second guessing it, and I was struggling so hard. Like, this is like a big decision for me to like, because I knew in my spirit, I'm like, once we pull him from all this support, I think he will die immediately. And everyone kept saying, "Oh, if it's God's will, you know, if he's supposed to live, he'll still keep living," you know. And I was like thinking, I just know in my spirit, if we pull this, that he's gonna go, you know. And yeah, and because even on the blood pressure meds, his blood pressure was still dropping, and they were having to like, they had him on the highest of two blood pressure meds and on the very highest dose. And then so what they ended up doing was switching one of them to a different like alternative one, which helped a little bit. And they're like, "This is only a temporary fix, and once this stops working, we got one more, like a third line of defense, and then that's all we got," you know. But so his body was already trying to still shut itself down, you know, even though we were doing everything possible to keep it alive. And I was struggling so much. I'm like, "God, why would you line up all these things? You know, why would you send this, you know?" And then, so I like called people that I thought would like help walk me through that decision, you know, and I still didn't fully have like a peace about it. And I called actually Robbie's wife, super late. It was like 11 o'clock at night. And she was like, Robbie and I are going to fast and pray, and we already are, and we're believing that God's going to speak really clearly to you, you know, and let you know, kind of like what you should do. And I was just like sitting there. It was like midnight, just not knowing what to do. And Isaiah had said that there was a doctor that wanted to come talk to me about methylene blue. And in my mind, that kind of like brought my spirit up, like methylene blue, that's like an alternative thing, you know, like, and that supports mitochondria, heals mitochondria. Maybe it's something that, and then I looked it up. I'm like, there's so much research that's done on kidney failure and liver failure with methylene blue and liver transplants. And I'm like, oh, so I like get all excited, you know? So I like call, I tell the doctor I'm like there and I'd like to talk to her. So she comes, and this doctor was one of the ones that was in this, every morning they do like a rounds, and the entire team there's usually like 10 to 15 doctors there, all different departments, that meet together about Malachi's case and banter back and forth what they think the best care of treatment for him is every day, and then they execute that. Well, this doctor I saw in multiple times, and I was like, dang, this girl really knows her stuff. Like, she's an extreme expert. She's wearing her ICU hat right now, but she's actually an expert in a lot of other fields in that hospital. She just happens to be in this position right now. So she had like a ton of expertise on all sorts of things. And so I was like, and she just told me the methylene blue was just the third line of defense. So it wasn't going to like save him. You know, it was just going to help prolong his life like one more day for the blood pressure meds. So I was like, can you just help me process through something here? And I'm like, I'm just really struggling to like let him go, you know, and like take him off this stuff. And I feel like all of this is presenting itself for this thing at Stanford. And she said, okay. And she's like, well, and she walked me through the scientific, like all sorts of scientific stuff in regards to getting a liver transplant. And she said, like, there's some terminology, I forgot what she called it, but it's the process of when you first get the new liver in the body, and the liver does something where it like, it's almost like flushes itself out into the new body, you know? And that process of like being accepted into the new body, it's called something, I forgot what it's called, but she said, they said it's kind of the equivalent energy-wise of running a marathon on your body. And she's like, there's no way that Malachi's body could handle that. And she goes, in my expertise, in my opinion, clinically, there's no way he could even undergo like anesthesia right now, because just anesthesia alone is super hard on your body, let alone another transplant, you know, which is a massive like energy pull on your body. And she's like, he just does not have the reserves or the energy, like the fuel for that. And she's like, I don't even know how he would make the transport there. And it would be really sad if he died in the middle of the transport. You know, that would not be peaceful. And that would be, you wouldn't want him to die in a trauma situation. You know, that would be a sad way to go. And so her talking through all of that stuff really, like, I felt like that gave me the peace that I needed, you know? And I was like, all right. And I asked Kai one more time that day. Or no, it was the next day. So that was that day. I felt like I had that peace. The next morning, Shoshana really wanted to see him one more time. So I was like kind of waiting for her to come. And Grandma and Grandpa were going to come and see him one last time. And this lady online who was a hospice nurse was telling me all these like different ideas of things to do like before he passes, you know, like take some of his hair, like in his fingerprints, like just different types of things like that I wouldn't be able to do later. And I thought that was really cool. She had really great suggestions. And then I called your dad because I thought, well, I know he saw him yesterday, but probably, you know, I should give him a heads up and maybe he could see him one more time, you know. And so I messaged him and I said, you know, I don't think he has much longer. Do you want to come see him one more time? And he said yes. So he brought your grandma Sandy and the two of them came, you know, and Isaiah was there and he had called Elena's mom. And so Elena's mom came and she like brought us food and she ended up staying. She was there. Was she there when you were there, Shona?
Who?
Miss Elena's mom?
No.
Miss Dankworth?
Oh, wait. Yeah, I saw her.
Chrissy.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, yeah. So she was there the longest time. And then ended up, Isaiah called Devin. Remember Malachi's friend Devin? And she ended up coming.
Yeah, so I texted Devin because I was like, hey, basically we're going to be pulling him off all of his stuff. And once that happens, doctors say it could be between hours and possibly days, but probably just hours. And so she was in the middle of nannying, and she was like, oh my gosh, okay. So she was getting done with her stuff, and then she ended up coming over, which was very good. And she was able to be there. And he's actually able to see her, but I don't think he was really able to like communicate. He just kind of like saw her and noticed that she was there, which was really good because him and her were really close.
So he was still on pretty high pain meds at that point, like all day long, but he was still able to, kind of say. It was so funny. Every time they would give him a bath or do something that he really didn't like, try to move him around, they'd be like, "All right, Kai, you got it. It's time to do this," and he'd go, "Oh man."
That was like his key word for the last like day and a half. Was, "Oh, man."
I don't know how many times he said, "Oh man." It was like one of the very few things he said very clearly. And so I asked him one more time, I'm like, and I asked him that morning, and after your dad had been there, after Grandma, Grandpa had been there, everybody, I'm like, "Are you sure you're ready for me to do this?" And Isaiah heard it too. He was like, "I'm so ready."
Yeah.
He's like, "I'm very ready." Yeah. Like, okay. And so I signed the hospice papers and they came in. Yeah.
Well, they came in and started disconnecting him from the dialysis machine, and then they had to do something. Oh, he started hurting really bad because of something with the tubes, and so they had to remove a bunch of the tubes. And during that time, Elena and I and Miss Christie went out and walked around for a second because I was getting, like, my heels were hurting and everything from standing for so long. And so we walked around and then got some coffee and came back. And by that time, they had pulled him off of the, all of like the medications and stuff because they had to pull a bunch of the tubes out of him and stuff. It's much more peaceful. Very like he didn't have his heart rate monitor and whatever. He just had I think like 1 or 2 tubes in him, and they pulled him off of all that. And at that point, they basically had a blood pressure monitor that would sit there. And it would kind of just tell you where his blood pressure's at and a heart rate monitor and everything, just like you see in the movies with like the boop, boop, boop. And,
well, and at that point, when he was in all that pain and something was wrong with the, with like the catheter that was in his groin area, you guys had stepped out, but actually Miss Christie and I were still in the room.
Mm-hmm.
And I was, like praying. Like Miss Christie was by the window. And she was just kind of hanging out there, and she was praying over there, and I was in the other side of the room by the door, and I was praying, and I was like praying, and I was like casting out any, demonic entities, and like asking God to send like protector, like warrior angels there, to like protect him and usher him into his presence, safely. And I asked for heavenly hosts to be sent there. I mean, I was like praying, like praying in my prayer language and stuff. And then, and that probably went on for maybe like 10 or 15 minutes. And you could tell Miss Christie must have been doing a similar thing on the other side of the room. And then she kind of comes over to me and we kind of like meet in the middle and we're praying together. And so Malachi's like laying there, drugged out of his mind because they gave him a double dose of the Dilaudid, the opioids, and then they gave him a Dilaudid drip, which was another thing on top of it. And then because he had that pain, when they took that out, they gave him another push of another super heavy narcotic. And so he was like drugged out of his mind. So he was just like laying there. And Miss Christie and I are praying. And as we're praying, I see him like look up, like he looks up at us, like clearly looking up at us. I'm like, wow, that's interesting. And then so I start singing. I don't remember what I was singing. And so she starts singing with me and we both start singing. It was really like, it felt so holy. And as we were doing that, he opens his eyes like a bunch of times and like leaves them open, clearly like looking right at us. And he kind of like, it was almost like he's trying to say something with his mouth. And he's very clearly watching both of us. And then he raises his hand. He hadn't been able to use his hands in a long time. He raises his hand and clearly says, "Praise God," while we were like singing.
Yeah.
And we both heard him clear as day, and we both just start bawling our eyes out, because it was so obvious his spirit was receiving, I mean, it was so beautiful. And then everybody ended up coming back in the room then, and we all just kind of sat around him. And we were singing, and Devin sat next to him, and we sung all these hymns. Like we sung
Mm-hmm.
How Great Thou Art. We sung,
Holy, 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 it is well. Yeah.
we sung all kinds of beautiful songs, and it was really nice because, Devin's an amazing singer. Elaine is an amazing singer. Miss Dankwer is a pretty good singer too, and so it was just beautiful. And then, so then Devin's like, "How about this? Why don't we all like circle around his bed, and let's pray and like thank God for him. Do you guys want to do that?" And I'm like, "Yeah." Mm-hmm. So we all like circle around him, and I'm like kind of watching I go over to the heart rate monitor, and I'm seeing. It was a weird monitor, so it wasn't like a typical. It was like extremely accurate because actually in his vein, and it starts off when they unhook him like 50 something, and it's just slowly dropping. Like it's 50, then it's like 48, and it's like 38, it's like 35, 31. Like it's just slowly dropping as time goes on. And basically they said what would happen is it would drop all the way to till where it was no longer, and then his heart would stop. And so I could see that was happening, and so I knew we didn't have a whole lot longer, and he was just like laying there, and very peacefully. And so I start praying and just praising God and thanking God for all the little things, like all the little, like how God made him love lizards and be so coordinated he could run through the field at 2 years old in flip-flops and catch a mouse, and just all these like little things that were super unique to him. And then we were just praying, and then Devin ended up praying at the end, and she was like laughing and crying, praying, It was so sweet.
Very Devin-like.
And then as she's doing that, he has like a tear that rolls down his face. And then she's like, "Well, why don't we sing his favorite hymns again?" I actually recorded it, and we sung Holy, Holy, Holy. That was really beautiful. And then
A Mighty Fortress.
And then I had my hand, so I was like at his bedside here. Mm-hmm. I had my hand on his heart, and then I was holding his other hand, he's just like this, and I was holding his hand with his right hand with my hand.
And Devin was holding his other hand.
Yeah, and Devin was holding his other hand. And A Mighty Fortress was a little awkward because none of us knew the lyrics or none of the words.
I was like the only one who could actually sing the full tune.
So we're like trying to read it from our phones kind of awkwardly, and I could feel his heart kind of like fading, and I'm like, I'd like look up at Isaiah, and he'd be like,
yeah, because I was
he'd be like
of the monitor,
motioning to me like what it's at, so it's really low. And about halfway through Holy Holy, I was like, he's gone. His heart stopped beating. And I look over at him, and then they all look at the monitor, and they're like, and that was it. And it was super peaceful.
Uh-huh.
And Miss Dankwer said that when she looked over at it, that it like flatlined, but then it went bloop, and then it flatlined again.
Mm-hmm. Like fluttered for a second.
But I will never forget that sound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right in the middle of one of his favorite hymns. It was very peaceful and very relaxed, and
it was so beautiful.
It was very, very sweet. So, but yeah, it just kept steadily dropping, and then just
they could just fade away. Yeah. And yeah, and then also your work.
Yeah, I mean, my boss called me about halfway through the day and was like, "Don't come into work for the rest of the week." She was like, "Take your time, all you need."
And you get paid time off
PTO,
for the whole week.
Yeah, for the whole week.
Yeah, that was like incredible.
So very, very sweet.
So after he passed, I mean, I was like weeping, like I'd never wept before on him. Mm-hmm. Like I was like hugging him, just crying a lot. And I think we were all crying. Devin was weeping. Mm-hmm. I mean, we were like just sobbing.
Grandpa had literally like 5 seconds after Malachi passed, and Mom was like, "Oh my gosh, he passed." Like 5 seconds after that, Grandpa called to check up on him, which was crazy.
That's what he told all of us, like literally as that happened.
Yeah. So, and then after that, Mom was like weeping and crying, and she was like, "Can you just tell everyone?" So then I stepped out of the room and started making calls.
Yeah.
And I called a bunch of people. Unfortunately, Kyle was the second person I called because he had texted me and That poor guy's so emotional as he instantly started just like sobbing, crying right off the rip. I was like, I love you, dude. I got other people to call. I gotta go. So I had to hang up on him, and then I ended up talking to everybody and talked with Seth, and Seth started crying too, and yeah.
Yeah.
I got told about it like 2 hours after.
He's very loved, but it just felt like there was a lot of really cool supernatural things that happened, including like he had the same night nurse who was so precious and took such good care of him. Normally the nurses are switching, and every 2 or 3 days you got different nurses. He had the same night nurse for like 6 days
6
in a row.
days.
That never happens.
The poor girl was so tired. She was ready to be done.
But she was so gracious.
So sweet.
Yeah. Yeah. But a lot of really precious, like, mercies, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So,
That's the story.
that's it.
Very